Okay, so here's our challenges for insert and edit, right? We have the data we want to actually change are the foreign key IDs, but of course in read-only mode we want to be displaying the actual names of the artist and the art type, and in edit mode we don't want to even bother them with these integer numbers. We want to give them a way to choose the appropriate lookup value, right? So the easiest way to do that, I could delete either one, but I usually keep the text versions here of the foreign keys, and I can just take the other columns out. Don't panic, we're going to supply that data anyway. So now I have the right number of columns, art type and artist, right? But what I have to do is, unlike a bound field, which only has two states, so to speak, it either uses a label to display or a text box for edit or insert mode, I can take full control of the template used in the different modes by converting these to a template field. So I'm going to convert both of them, art type and artist. Notice the little icons change at the same time. Okay, so I'll just click OK for now. If I switch to source, what you're going to see here, okay, in the details view, here are our bound fields. So we just have plain vanilla bound fields for title, description, art type, description, and the date and the value and so on. Now here's our first template field, right? This is the one for art type. And so notice that we have a edit item template, an insert item template, and a just item template or read-only template, right? So inside the item template for read-only version status, we just have a label. But what is the label doing? Well, notice that the text property of the label, right, is bound to, with this command here on server-side scripting tags, bound to the field art type. So that data coming from our select statement, art type, okay, which is the actual description, painting versus sculpture, that will be assigned to the text property, right? So that's how it will display the actual text, all right? So the insert and edit items right now are using text boxes. That's not going to do, right? Because it's not really the art type that we want to, changing the name of that will not do what we want. What we really want to do in terms of an insert or an update is have a drop-down list where we can choose the art type, and it's actually the integer value. The primary key of the art type is what we're going to store or relate to. Another word is bind it to the actual integer foreign key value. Same thing down here for the artist. So this is good. Now we have access to the templates used in each and every state of the details view, but we actually have to modify what's in here. I could do it actually all in the code here, but it's sometimes easier in the design view. Okay, so what we need to do now is, look at this, edit templates. Right? If I select edit templates, it puts the whole design surface into a different mode, right? So what we see then is for each field, and here's my display, what is it I'm looking for? Is it art type or artist, right? So I select the field, and I can just look at one template at a time, or if I select the little heading here, so to speak, art type, then I see all of the different templates that are available. Now, some of them weren't even showing up in my code yet, but if I put something in there, then it would, right? So there's the header template, there's the insert item template, edit item template, alternating. So if you have alternating rows, that's more for the grid, and then just our item template or read-only template, right? So that's good. So now I have access and I can manipulate what's to be done in the design surface here in each of these templates. So if I select this label, look at that. There's a quick task button in the upper right. So let me go to Edit Data Bindings. That's the only task here for a label. So that brings up our Data Bindings dialog box. So what bindable properties do we have? Well, it's the text property. That's the one even in code we saw that we were binding to. So it's bound to art type. So if we hadn't, if I'd chosen the integer based one first, that would be fine. I just come in here and make sure that the text of my label in this column is showing the full name of the art type, right? Okay. Now, technically, notice it assumes two-way data binding. I could take that off because one way is all I need. In other words, it just pulls information from the database and displays it. So it goes one way into the bound control, right? Not a big deal if I leave that on or off, but just thought I'd explain what this is for. Okay, so that's good. So the label will show the name, the full name of the art type. So here, these text boxes are really no good, right? I need to get rid of them. So I'm going to press the delete key. Do the same thing down here in the insert item template. There we go, and they're now gone. All right, so with the insertion point inside the template, let me come up here to the standard section of our toolbox, because here's where I find drop-down list. Okay, so what I want ideally in the user interface is a way to choose or pick out of a list the appropriate art type in this case. So I can just double click to put it inside here. I could drag and drop it. It doesn't matter. But in the quick tasks, we have a few more choices. Notice there's an edit items, right? Because you can manually define items to appear in a drop-down list. That's not something we're going to do here because our data is coming entirely from the database. But the other two things we do have to do is edit the data binding and choose the data source. So the data source is used to display data, to populate it with choices. The data binding says, okay, what property are we going to bind to what information for of course, in this case, it's the update template. So it'll be used in the update command. So let's go to the edit data bindings first. So the property of the drop-down list we want is selected value. Good, it's already chosen. Now if I click my drop-down list here, what is it I want to actually manipulate or change in an update when it comes to choosing an art type? Well, of course, it's art type ID, the integer value. So this is the one that goes back as a parameter and is updated in the actual artwork table. Not this text version. I can't change that here. It's only the choice of the ID of the art type. So that's what we want. And we do want two-way binding, right? So we want to be able to both get it from the database and send the current choice back to the database. Okay, so that's it. We're done with our data binding. Let me emphasize again, we're binding the selected value of our drop-down list to the actual foreign key art type ID. Okay, now we have nothing showing in our drop-down list yet, so we have to choose the data source. Well, think back when we started off, remember I said we're going to need 3 data sources, right? So I have one for art type list and artist list, so we're going to use the art type list in this case as the data source. So art type list. And by the way, if you don't get choices in your drop-down list right away, you can click the little blue refresh schema button, and it just goes and runs the select query of this data source to find out what choices are. Now remember, there's only 2 columns, right? 2 fields returned by these list style stored procedures. The ID, the primary key value, and the display text. So we'll look carefully here. So select the data field to display. Oh, what a surprise. That should be our display text. And the data field for the value of the drop-down list, remember, we bound the selected value of the drop-down list to our actual foreign key. So this is how we get it basically from the right hand to the left hand. Our data source the value of every option in the drop-down list will be the primary key of the related art type. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, right? And then by binding it to the actual foreign key in our artwork table, that's how when we pick something out of the list, it knows the ID of that to save that as the foreign key value in the artwork table. All right. Now here's a little trick. Because only one template appears at a time, right? We can actually just copy this, Control, and paste it in here. Right, there you go. That's nice and simple. So I don't have to set all those properties again. But just to review them, because it never hurts to make sure we understand, selected value goes to art type, right? And the data source, okay, is our art type list with the display text displaying and the ID stored as the internal value of each option. Okay. All right. So that's it. We're done here for the art type. Kind of repetitive because we have 2 foreign keys, so let's do the same thing for artist. Okay, let's just double check that the label here is just bound to artist. Okay, all right, and we don't need 2A, that's fine. Okay, ooh, this is weird. Why is there a label created by the wizard in the edit item template? Well, probably because it saw that this actual artist name didn't come from an actual table. It was a expression, right? It was the concatenated version of the last name and first name. So it knew it could not update it, right? You can't type in and define the first name, comma, last name and have it save that anywhere. So it knew to just get rid of that. It couldn't possibly update it, so it just used the label. I'm just going to take both those controls out. And again, we need drop-down lists. So I'll put a drop-down list here in the edit item. It'll be bound to the selected value, bound to artist ID with two-way binding. And then the data source will be our artist list, displaying the display text and keeping the ID of the artist internally as the value. Okay, so that's good. I'll just copy that and paste it down in this template as well. So we use the same basic arrangement for the drop-down list in both the edit and insert modes, right? And our label, okay, funny to me, maybe I changed that by accident, that it was set to art type. Anyway, there we go. All right. Let me just go back once more to art type and make sure I didn't mess this one up. No, we're good. Okay, so that's it. Now, anytime you want, then I can just select End Template Editing in the Quick Task Helper of the actual Details view itself. And that puts us back to this view. Okay, now we're just leaving the commands the way they are for now. That it's built in, it just seems to be working, so we'll worry about that later on. So let's see the difference now. If I click Run, okay, so I can step through the records. Oop, gotta actually click on it, right? Okay, let's make that bigger. All right, so that's good. And let's try if I edit. So the gambler, okay, oh, that's worth quite a bit of money. I might want to think about making that bigger, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time. You'll notice we don't have a lot of time. We only have 6 weeks in total. So this is not about making these web forms look pretty. In fact, it's darn ugly, right? That's okay. We're only focused on the functionality. Remember, this is just an example of using a client application to show the value of our stored procedures that we wrote in the database. But we do need to know how to make it work, and functionality is still required, right? So here's our art type, right? So I have a drop-down list, okay, alphabetically sorted of all the different art types. So if I want to make the gambler, no, that's decorative art, okay? I can click Update, and there we go. So I see that the gambler is now set to decorative art, and I can edit and put it back, okay, it's visual art. And, you know, I can change as much as I want. Probably a good idea to make sure I put it back again. But I'm showing that basically everything is working. Okay, I can change the date. No, it wasn't the first, it was the second. And we see everything is updating as we would hope it would, right? If I click New, I create a new piece of art. Title is Dave, date finished, 01-01-2001, my go-to date. It doesn't matter if I have month or year that way. Description, oh, look at that. I must have been playing with this earlier, sorry. Value, $100, right? And it is a sculpture by Jacques. Okay. All right, now it was added to the end of the list because that's where new records go. So I come here, I see I have 6 now, and away we go. So some obvious weaknesses of this, right? This navigation is fine if you have a handful of records, but if you have lots of records, you don't want to be clicking, you know, over and over and over again just to find you want. Plus, you'd have to go through each one to look for a given record the way it's set up. So those are a lot of weaknesses of this approach, but it does allow us to demonstrate insert. So we insert it. I can edit this record. No, it's actually worth 101 cents. Right, so updating works, and I can select delete, and there it is gone. I'm back down to 5 records. Ooh, that was pretty quick delete. I didn't get a confirmation or anything. So that's the last thing I'll do in this recording. Okay. To do that, there's a bit of a trick. This built-in command toolbox, or command here, that comes from this command field, right? In our HTML of our page. Notice the ASP namespace here for these tags. So show delete button is true, show edit button is true, insert button is true, and then of course it changes in the different modes, so you get your cancel buttons and so on showing up. So it's all automatic, and that's fine to a degree. But for the delete, what if we want to say, no, wait a second, on the client, I want to pop up and confirm, are you sure you want to delete? Well, kind of an easy way to do that is I have to come back into Edit Fields, select the command field, and turn it into a template. This will now give me access to everything going on inside there. So now my command field here has been templated, so I have full access to the buttons showing up in the edit, the insert, and so on, right? So in item mode, well, here are my two buttons, which represent the new and delete, right? Oh, and edit. So all three of them are there. Sorry about that. Okay. Whereas when I'm in insert mode, basically I have two buttons, one for insert and one for cancel, and then two buttons, one for in update mode, one for update and one for cancel, right? So now I have access to the actual buttons themselves, and I can make some changes there. Whereas before they were generated by the system automatically. So one of the ways to get into this is if I go into edit templates, now I have yet another one to choose from. Here's my field 6. Notice it doesn't have a name, it's the command field. I'll just pick it all so we can see everything, right? So here's the delete. Okay, so notice it's a link button. There's different types of buttons in our toolbox here. I just to mention quickly, we have regular buttons, we have link image buttons, and we have link buttons. So the link buttons look like a link, but they act as a button, right? So as I select the delete button, over here in the properties in the bottom right, let me zoom a little bit here. Okay, so yeah, that's fuzzy on the screen. I'm sure you'll be able to read it. So let me get rid of the zooming. All right, so what we have is all the different properties of this link button. We could change the name, right? If you want to, give it a proper name. My rule of thumb, and I've said this in other courses as well, if you're going to be referring to any object on the screen or elsewhere, either in your code or in the property of another object, then always give it a good name, right? At this stage, I can make the change we need here without actually changing, because I'm not going to refer to this button in code anywhere or in the property of another object. So what I really want here is this on client click. As it says, the client-side script that is executed on a client-side on click. So although we're working on the server, what it's going to do is provide a little bit of JavaScript on the client-side end. Now, of course, it'll depend on it supporting JavaScript, but that's a limitation that was probably not a big deal anymore. So what kind of JavaScript would we write in here? Well, we know from our JavaScript work that there's an alert and there's a confirm. A confirm is like an alert dialog box that comes up, but with like an OK and cancel type button, right? So when we do a confirm, are you sure you want to delete this record, right? What we can do is take the return value and then use that to cancel the event. So what I do is I reference the return value of my confirm. So I type this, don't worry, I have this in my PowerPoint. Return space, right? Confirm. And then I need a bracket. Put a single quote. Are you sure you want to delete this record? Question mark. Close my quote. Close my bracket and a semicolon, because we are doing JavaScript after all. Okay. And that's all it takes. That goes in on client click, a property of the delete button, which we didn't have access to until we templated the column. Okay, so with that in place, let me just run it away. I don't even need to worry about changing the view there in design view. Okay, so if I click delete, there we go. Are you sure you want to delete this record? Now if I say okay, it will actually delete it, so I can click cancel, and now it won't. All right, so we actually have, by following those different steps, a working details view where we can navigate through the records. It's kind of poor navigation, but it does work. We can edit each record. We can create new records. We can delete records. There you go. Bada bing, bada boom, eh? What do you think of that?